Hi.
Cleave and hitmass are core mechanics to the gameplay of Tide games, but are never explained anywhere, just mentioned to you as if you were already supposed to know what they mean, kinda like rending. If you've ever looked at Savage Sweep and wondered what 100% cleave meant, or looked at Manstopper and wondered what increased cleave means, you came to the right place. Every enemy in Darktide has a certain amount of hit mass. Every attack on every melee and range weapon can cleave through a certain amount of mass. You can think of attacks having a certain hit mass budget that gets spent when hitting enemies. In order to successfully cleave through an enemy, an attack's remaining hit mass budget must be greater than the mass of the enemy it's hitting. For instance, the first light attack on a Devil Claw 7 has 5.4 cleave. A Poxwalker has 1.5 mass. That means this attack can hit 4 Poxwalkers. When staggered, enemies get their mass reduced by 25%. Normally, the Graya infantry can't cleave shooters, but it can cleave them when they're staggered. The amount of targets that can be damaged by an attack is called damage cleave, and the amount of targets that can be staggered by an attack is called stagger cleave. They're usually aligned with each other, and if you stagger or hit an enemy, you will damage it. But some melee attacks don't damage all targets hit. This is usually referred to as a target cap or damage cap. Ogryn Club heavy sweeps cleave through many Poxwalkers, but only damage 3 of them, for instance. Damage and stagger are distributed among targets hit by an attack. Usually the distribution makes sense, with the first target taking the most damage and each subsequent target taking less and less damage. There are some exceptions. Heavy Sword heavy strike downs have no fall off on the second target, meaning it takes the exact same amount of damage as the first target. On the standard Vet Shovel heavies, the 5th target takes more damage than the 4th target. Guns don't care about target number and will deal the same amount of damage to all targets hit. The only exception to this rule is the Lawbringer's Special Shell. Rather than going over every single attack from every single weapon and show you their cleave values as well as showing the mass of every enemy in the game, I'm going to show you how to go find them yourself, since the game doesn't show you any of this. Plus that way it's going to be update proof. Teach him to fish and all that. There are 2 websites you're gonna need. The first is the Darktide Breakpoint calculator. It lets you select any weapon in the game and view a detailed breakdown of all its attacks against specific targets or armor classes of your choice. It looks very scary, but don't worry, we'll get through this. Pick the difficulty of your choice, put the damage mode to raw and the target mode to all. Once you've selected the weapon you want to look at, you can click on the attack of your choice below it. To display the damage breakdown, you'll need to select one or more enemy type or armor class. The most common way to look at weapons is to simply select all armor types. You're then going to see an attack breakdown per enemy or armor type that you've selected. You can also slot in any perks or blessings you want above the weapon selection. Each column, going from left to right, corresponds to body shot damage, weak spot damage, critical body shot damage, and critical headshot damage. Each row corresponds to the target number. The top row is the first target, and each subsequent row is the next target. If the last row shows a damage number, the weapon does not have a target cap, and will deal the bottom damage to any following target it hits. If the last row shows a 0, the attack is target capped, and will deal no damage to any following target hit. The second website you're going to need is a very scary looking spreadsheet. Every enemy has its mass listed under the hit mass column. If there are multiple numbers listed, the one before the last is the correct number corresponding to damnation difficulty, and each previous number listed corresponds to the previous difficulty. A few attacks have an innate mass modifier against certain armor types. This isn't listed on the Breakpoint calculator, but there's few enough of them that I can simply list them here. These attacks have a multiplier to enemy mass against certain armor types. Don't ask me why. With the basics out of the way, it's time to look at how blessings can interact with Cleave. Normal Cleave blessings like Wrath and Savage Sweep work just like you'd expect them to. Now that you know what the baseline 100% cleave of an attack is and what Cleave means, you know what 300% cleave means. Normally, Carapace cannot be cleaved, but some blessings allow you to. Perfect Strike does 2 things to Cleave. It allows critical hits to cleave through Carapace as if it were a normal armor type, and it reduces the hit mass of enemies by 75%. For instance, the first heavy on the Mark II Eviscerator can cleave through 9.5 mass. It normally cannot cleave a Crusher, both because the Crusher has a mass of 12.5, which is higher than the cleave potential of that attack, and because the Crusher is made of Carapace. With Perfect Strike, a critical heavy one can now cleave through 3 Crushers and hit a 4th one. Bulwarks don't take damage even if you cleave through their shields. The shield is actually considered a body part with a ×0 damage multiplier. Since the plasma gun ignores hit zone modifiers except for headshots, it damages the bulwark on shield hits. Similarly to Perfect Strike, Sunder lets energized attacks cleave through Carapace. It also reduces enemy hitmass by 75% when using energized attacks. Shock and Aw's description is accurate. Unstoppable Force lets all heavy attacks cleave through Carapace, and lets fully charged heavy attacks completely ignore enemy hitmass. Manstopper lets critical hits cleave infinite hitmass, but they'll still be stopped by Carapace. Pierce reduces enemy hitmass by 75% when using special attacks, and also allows them to cleave Carapace. It's also currently bugged, and the extra stagger is not applied. Power in Darktide is a stat that does everything. More power means more cleave, more stagger, and more damage. But power isn't always power. Some blessings only give power to your gun or melee attacks, and some blessings give global power. The difference between the two is that global power will also increase the damage of any active dot effects you've applied. Here's a list of all local power blessings and all global power blessings. If you're wondering how all these blessings interact with each other, all cleave blessings stack additively with one another and multiplicatively with power blessings. All power blessings stack additively with each other and multiplicatively with damage buffs. I strongly suggest looking at Kuli's guides, spelled Kuli, on blessings, and his guides in general. He takes stuff directly from the code and is great at explaining things. If anything in this video becomes outdated, or even if you're just curious, go check them out. Brutal Momentum and Deathblow are the same blessing. Even though I already made a video on it, it's probably worth covering in a video dedicated to Cleave and Hitmass. The description doesn't really tell you anything about how the blessing actually works. Enemies killed by a headshot will not consume any of the hitmass budget of the swing and will not count for the purposes of damage distribution. It can do this up to 3 times, and the 4th enemy hit will still count as the first target hit, and start consuming the hitmass budget of the swing normally. It doesn't work on Ogryns anymore. That's probably it. Bye.